What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the No Starving Artist podcast. We have an amazing guest today, but first, don't forget you can check out all the podcast episodes, on-demand training, in-person training at www.nsadance.com. Also, shout out to, I was going to put the can up here, but I forgot to Black Magic Supplements. If you're looking for protein, pre-workout, anything like that, you can use code HeyIt'sPickett for 20% off from them. So that's amazing. But today we have Brayden Singley. I've known Brayden for a very long time, actually. So I'm excited to kind of talk to him a little bit more in depth about his journey. But tell the people a little bit about yourself, where you're at right now in life.
All right, where I'm at. I was born and raised in Utah. I started dancing in high school. And then I went to college for dance right after. And then I now live in New York City, doing the gig out there, doing just teaching my own classes, subbing at a few studios. And performing gigs whenever.
Where'd you go to college?
I went to a year at the University of Utah.
Okay.
And then I went on an LDS mission for 2 years.
Okay.
Came back and then went to BYU. That's where I graduated from.
Dance?
Yes.
How was that?
At both. It was good.
It was good?
It was wonderful.
I talked to, I had an episode with Ramses. Do you know Ramses?
I know that name 100%.
Yeah. He's around. But he's great. He's really great. He went to, I think, just recently finished at BYU. And it was a really cool, he was talking about how they do a lot of, like, I don't know if they did this when you went there, but they did a lot of, like, safety within dance, like physical touch, like that kind of thing. It was a cool conversation. But
what was his degree? Was it contemporary? Do you know?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't remember. Yeah, I think it might have been the what is the dance theater dance?
Oh, MDT. Musical
MDT.
Dance
yeah,
theater?
I think it was that.
I see.
Yeah.
I've been out since 2019.
Oh, okay.
So it's been 4 years. So we probably didn't overlap much.
Yeah. And I wonder if things have changed even since then.
Probably. Oh, I'm sure.
Even like 4 years ago was a lot different dance-wise than now.
Totally.
Yeah.
And we had COVID in the mix. And
yeah. So New York. So that's what I'm really interested in because I've never moved anywhere.
Okay.
I mean, I've moved to Utah, but like I've never moved anywhere for dance.
Where are you from?
From Michigan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But I've never moved, like, I've never done an LA or a New York or like Atlanta. So what was, had you done a move before or no?
No.
Okay. So just Utah, Mission, and then you made the decision.
Yes.
Why New York?
New York has both commercial and contemporary very heavily.
Okay.
And that, I mean, my degree was in concert contemporary dance. And so I've been very interested in that, like the whole Batsheva, Gaga, just concert contemporary dance. Yeah. But I also love kind of the theater, getting to use like my showy, entertaining styles as well. Because, growing up and dancing, you're taught, at least here in Utah and most studios, I feel like, you are just hounded that you have to be good at everything. You don't just like get to choose contemporary or get to choose a commercial style. It's like you have to, when you go to a convention, it's like you have tap, ballroom, contemporary, jazz, like you're literally doing everything. Yeah. And so, I mean, I worked hard on all of those things. Yeah. So I wanted to be able to work professionally in whatever I wanted to. And New York City has everything, in my opinion. Yeah. And LA does too, but to a certain degree. I mean, they're way more heavy commercial, whereas New York City is way more heavy concert and theater.
Interesting.
So it just has like the best of both worlds.
Yeah. That's fair. So what was the decision-making process like? So you realize New York's the fit, and then you're just like, was there any sort of prep beforehand, or you're just like, let me get a plane ticket and we'll figure it out as we go?
Yes and no. So back in, I want to say 2017, I went to New York City with BYU. So we did kind of like a week tour situation.
Got it. Okay.
And when I was there, we did kind of a few classes at a studio called Gibney, and there were some people that talked about how simple it is to move to New York City. And that was the first time I had ever heard somebody talk about that it's not as hard as people think it is.
Yeah.
And so back in 2017, I remember just like feeling great while I was there, and I was like, okay, I think this is the place for me. So once I graduated, COVID hit immediately, which was unfortunate for the world. But I auditioned for Tuacahn. It's it's the Equity House here in southern Utah in St. George. And my goal, since I already knew I wanted to move to New York City, I was like, okay, the last time I did musical theater was in junior high school. So I need something on my resume before I move out there. So I was lucky enough to get into Tuacahn, and then I did 4 shows in one summer. Okay. So then I got done the summer of 21 and moved to New York City the following February.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So it just helped me. Like, I felt more confident that I had some recent professional experience under my belt instead of just like showing up bright-eyed and right out of college and being like, I'm ready, you know. So
that's
the
fair.
Tuacahn, like in my dancing career, I've always tried to set myself up for the next thing. So I very purposefully had the goal in mind to go to New York City. Yeah. And so Tuacahn was like a means to an end to get me there and feel confident. Okay. And it worked out really well.
Yeah. Okay. And now what? So just auditioning. Is there something you have your eyes on that you're kind of working towards now? Or what's like, where are your kind of goals at the moment?
Very good question. I was fortunate enough to join the Broadway tour of Fiddler on the Roof.
Okay, yes. So, I saw this. Okay.
Yeah, which was incredible. Yeah. It was a show that I am hesitant that I'll ever be able to feel that fulfilled as an artist in a show ever again. Okay. It just like, I felt like I just fit into that world. Very easily, and it just the style of contemporary and move. Like, I never thought I could dance so contemporary in a Broadway show. Like, I didn't know that existed.
Okay, yeah.
And so that was very fulfilling. I got done this March. And then I went back out to the city for 2.5 months, just doing some dance gigs there. And I think I came to the conclusion that performing is no longer my focus.
Interesting.
It's solely choreography and solely teaching.
Okay.
So now that I'm going back next week, to sign like a year lease, sit down for a while instead of just coming back and forth. Yeah. I'm ready to just create. Yeah. And teach. And I have so many concept videos that I have in mind, and I have a group of friends out there that are so talented and kind, and they're always very willing to just like jump in with me and do whatever. So I'm very creatively focused on creating instead of performing. Yeah. So it was nice. And I think some people prefer performing over creating. Yeah. I'm just not one of those people.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. Let's pivot to that, because now I'm intrigued. What's your process like going into a choreography session or a class? Are you like, I know of people who like write down everything they're going to do in a piece or in a class. And whereas I am on the complete opposite end of that, where I do pretty much the bare minimum before I go into a situation. What's kind of like your preparation process going into, let's say choreography first, and then we'll talk about like a class.
Okay. Choreography, it honestly just depends on the group that I'm working with. Like, for example, if I'm setting a 5-minute work at a university, I'm usually thinking about that work months in advance. So it's not just something that I kind of like, all right, we'll see how it goes. Fair. It's on my mind. I'm thinking about it consistently, listening to the music over and over and over, just extracting as much as I can from it. So it just kind of depends on the group, but I would say overall, I become extremely familiar with the music. So whenever I'm driving, whatever, if I'm sitting on the train and I'm taking a long ride, I just listen to the music over and over and over.
Yeah.
So then that way, when I go in, movement just tends to flow a lot more easily. Yeah. When I just know what's coming with the music. So that's how I prepare the most. Okay. I don't do much prep work choreographically now. I feel like I'm experienced enough and have done it so much that my brain knows how to create movements just in the space with the dancers. That being said, depending on the style, that also adjusts things too. Fair. Like contemporary, I don't have to think at all. It just like flows out of me, or however you want to say that. Yeah. When I do like jazz funk, or like for example, I just set a halftime performance for the jazz dancers. Yeah. Yes. I definitely had 90% of that choreographed.
That's fair. Okay.
You know, because the stakes are high. Yeah. You know, it's like the NBA team. So, and a lot of people are seeing it. So I want to make sure that they're not getting my first draft. They're getting like 3-4 drafts in. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay. Yes. Yeah. 100%. So when the stakes are higher, I tend to get a little more antsy and I need to prepare beforehand. That just keeps my emotions at bay and keeps me a little more calm in the room.
Do you typically start with music first or a concept first, or it depends?
Music for 100% of the time.
Really? Yeah. Really?
I just hear a song and immediately it just starts like expanding in my brain, and then I'm like, okay, this is it, we're using this. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. What about class? So when you go into a class situation, do you kind of have it's like for me now, I'm like crafting this like outline of my classes, I guess, so to speak. The content differs obviously, but like the outline is relatively similar. Do you have any sort of process like that, or is it really kind of just you freely expressing in that moment depending on kind of the energy of the class? I would say maybe a little mix of both. Again, it depends on the dancers, the studio, the group. It's again like going to a university and teaching a class there is so different than teaching at a studio. So the way that I prepare it is different. But I would say overall, I don't do a ton of preparation just because I know what I am going to give them as far as like movement. And I've either taught the movement before or I just created it, so it's still very fresh on my brain. But I will express that when we start the class. I'll express some principles and concepts that I want them to get out of class. Because in college, you know, we talked about that quite a bit, as having a lesson plan and laying out an outline of what you want them to get out of class. So then that way you're not just kind of like open-ended to the point that you have no idea where you're going with class. Right. So I think it's a give and take, because sometimes I'll go into a class and I'll have this combo prepared and these concepts prepared, and then either they are not as advanced as I was planning for, which honestly is most of the time. And I'm like, okay, so let's transition to something different. Or I will in the moment just make adjustments to the movement and make sure that the dancers are not getting overwhelmed or frustrated. That's the biggest goal. Is that people leave feeling like their time was used wisely and well, and that they don't leave frustrated and too overwhelmed that the conversation in their head was just way louder than me. That's the goal. For that to not happen. I'm interested in your take on your college experience. I actually just recently had a parent message me on Instagram, and their dancers kind of getting ready to make the transition into the real world, right? Into life. And they were asking me if I had gotten a college degree in dance and what my experience was. I have not. So I'm always interested when people have. Was it worth it? Did you like it? What were some of the things that you felt like you took from it?
And what were some, maybe not specific things, but were there things that you were kind of like, eh?
Yes. Yes. Very loaded, to all of the above. No, for sure.
Was it worth it? Let's start there.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
It's hard. Yeah, answering that question is tricky because you also have the conversation like, what could my life have been without it?
Right.
You know, like I have no idea. All I can go off of is like what it did give me, because who knows what it would have been without it. Yeah. I could have been leaps and bounds ahead of where I'm at now, or I could be
behind,
not even a dancer anymore.
True.
You know, it's just like,
do you feel like there's things that you're still using now that you learned from your degree?
100%.
Yeah.
We had a methods of teaching class, which was extremely helpful for me. To be fully transparent, this professor will probably never see this, but it was a very frustrating experience, and that taught me the most. I feel like the most I've learned comes from people that I had a negative experience with. Because I'm like, I'm never doing that. Or, this is why it was so negative. Let me do this instead.
Yeah.
So I would say college is really important if you want to continue dancing professionally. Okay. Especially in theater and or theater. I say theater with a hard A. I know. I'm trying to work on it. Theater, or concert dance.
Okay. Do you feel? Sorry, this is a sidebar. Do you feel like, being in New York, is it something that's looked at, like whether you have a degree or not?
I don't know. I would say overall, not really.
Okay.
People are just looking at what you can do and what you can't do.
Okay.
That being said, though, if you do have a degree, people are interested where you go, like where you went.
Interesting. Okay. Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
it's like, we don't really care, but you have one. Where'd you go?
Yeah. Like, of course, because if I say I'm from BYU and another dancer says they're from Juilliard, it's like, oh, okay, you know. But that being said, let me support myself for a little bit. I went to I've gone to several workshops just like all over the world. And one of those was called Springboard. Most recently, it was in Montreal, Canada. And everyone there went to some prestigious university. Yeah. It was like Marymount, Juilliard, NYU, just all these crazy. And I'm just like, hi, I'm from BYU. You know, at the end of the day, here's the thing. It doesn't matter where you went to school. Yeah. It doesn't. Yeah. It genuinely doesn't. If you are out doing workshops with other companies, if you're getting funding from your school to go out and do things, that's what matters most. Because your training is what's going to show. Nobody knows your degree. Nobody knows what school you're from. What they see when they sit down in a class or an audition, it's what you can do. Yeah. So it really does, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you went to school. If you're talented and you have received enough information, they don't care. Yeah. They genuinely don't care.
From a, oh my gosh, it was so great. Where'd it go?
I'll keep going.
Keep going.
That being said, there are certain universities and schools that feed into specific companies. So
this was the question. From a networking standpoint, did you feel like it was worthwhile?
Yes. And then there were some things that I'm like, darn, if I would have known about this school sooner, I would have gone there.
Okay. So, because this is big, like so I have a business degree, and this is like massive in like, I guess what we would call like traditional degrees, like medical, law, business. Like the value of college tends to be more so the network as opposed to the actual content.
Totally. And that is how dance is as well. Okay. I will say. Okay. Because, for example, like I was saying, some universities and schools feed into specific companies. So if you're interested in like certain companies or certain jobs, look at where their people are coming from. because many of them have this like streamline.
Yeah.
If you go to this school, you're probably going to end up in this company because this company has relationships with these certain schools. Like Batsheva is extremely connected with Juilliard, especially as of late. They are taking everybody from Juilliard. It's crazy. Northwest Dance Project, I feel like I don't want to speak too much on which companies do what because I don't want somebody to be like, oh, that's what I have to do. But anyways, all I'll say is look at company members on like companies that you're interested in
and see where
they went to school, see what they did, because chances are
there's some sort of like overlap,
connection and relationship there.
Interesting.
Yeah,
interesting. Okay. So overall, thumbs up, thumbs down. College experience.
Overall, I'm very thankful that I did that.
Okay.
I'm very thankful because you learn so much more. Like you have your generals that you take and you like my physical science class changed the way that I saw the world, which then changed the way I saw movement. Same with my philosophy class. Like these classes that I just never would have been taking. Yeah. Going to a university forced me to experience new things, experience new people, new ideas, new concepts, which then immediately shifted my artistry. So overall, I'm extremely thankful for my college experience.
Well, I think too, and I'm not saying this to speak for you at all, but I think too, for some kids, if they don't know 100% what they want to do in any aspect of life, but since we're talking about dance, if you're not really sure, but you know you want to dance, I could see it also being a really good option to just, like you said, now you might take a class that you maybe didn't even expect to trigger something and be like, oh, now I know exactly what I want to do with my artistry.
Absolutely.
So I think that that's another kind of thing for people to think about. And I think a lot of people, their parents, I know for a lot of dancers, their parents are like, go to college. And so then they're like, then the dancer in them is like, well, then maybe I should get a dance degree. But it's like, is it purposeful? Is it not purposeful?
Totally.
I know in the studio world, it's looked at. I don't know that it's like taken extremely, like the weight of it is extremely important, but I definitely know studios that kind of lean towards people that have degrees, especially when it comes to more technical styles.
Yes. Yeah, because if you're looking at teaching long term or like creating or whatever it is, having a degree is going to push you forward. Yeah. Especially when it comes to other people. Yeah. You're just getting a higher level of education. Whereas, like, for example, some people in LA, like, they're teaching classes and they're like 18 years old, 19 years old. And there's still so much maturity that needs to happen. And they always get in, this is pretty extreme, but whatever. They like get in front of the class and they say this big speech and it's all about them. Yeah. And it's like in school, you rid that out of yourself. It's not about you. It is absolutely not about you. It's about the experience that the dancers are having. Yeah. And that concept and those principles are taught very clearly at most universities that I'm aware of. Interesting. And without that training, without that specific like learning, you continue to have a little less I want to say maturity in your teaching. Yeah. So it makes sense that studios look at degrees because the ways that they are able to teach students are just higher. Yeah. They really are. They're more refined, really, they're more really clear. Yeah. Versus like, oh yeah, like I dance, I just got out of my studio. Like now let me teach all of your most advanced dancers very mature concepts and textures and just all these things where it's like, well, what have you experienced? Nothing. You went from studio to teaching. So it's like...
This is a really interesting through line, actually, that I've had pop up in a lot of the episodes because, one, I'm very open about the fact that I started teaching when I was 16, probably shouldn't have, and was very terrible for the majority of those first few years. And so I had to learn, what not to do by unfortunately doing it, you know what I'm saying? Totally. By making these mistakes of ultimately like pushing dancers away from dance because I was so focused on what was going to help my career and my journey And so I really like that perspective because, yeah, I think that had I waited, I mean, obviously I'm here and it's like you said earlier, like it's sometimes not purposeful to look back and be like, oh, well, if I would have done this, like I'm here. So totally. It's like, it's not super worth it, but I think it would have definitely sped up. I would have gotten to this point faster had I gone through something like that. Or like a lot of the people I talk to are really big on mentors.
Oh yeah.
And I think that the great thing is that mentors can do that, what you're talking about, right? Mentors can fill that space of like, here's what not to do because I did it 20 years ago. But I think the problem is a lot of dancers have trouble or just are never able to find a solid mentor. So I think that's where university is a great option because essentially you're getting mentorship from, 10, 20 different people over the course of your degree.
Yes.
So
I love that. I love that perspective. It is so true. The way that your professors shape your future is intense. They really do. Yeah. And you, like you said, you just have multiple mentors. Yeah. And they've all experienced different things in the professional world. So you can, I don't know, you have laid out in front of you every direction what it seems like, and you can get closer.
Every mistake,
it's like good, bad, whatever you want. And so you have just like, terrible analogy, but it's like Pokemon.
No,
it's like, that like
at
the beginning you have the 3 that you can choose from. Yeah. In a university setting, you have all these professors that you look at, and you look at the lives that they've lived, and you're like, I want that. Or you're like, I don't want that. And so you can gravitate towards certain ones. Whereas, when you don't have those options so readily available to you, how do you go and find something that you're gonna like? It's I really like that perspective. Yeah.
Because it's hard. I think it's hard as a teacher too. You're hard on yourself because when you make those mistakes and you realize you made those mistakes, you're like, it's a terrible feeling. You know what I mean? Like, it's a terrible feeling to look back and be like, man, like I potentially caused someone to not like dance anymore, or whatever it was, whatever it was. Maybe it was something less dramatic than that, but whatever it was, maybe it was one day that you sent a dancer home and they're like, I hate dance. Like, totally. Even just thinking about that idea is like, it's heartbreaking. So it's like, anyways, I like that. I feel like I'm becoming more of a fan of college as we're having this conversation. I think before it's just kind of like, I don't know, sure. Like, do you want to go to college? Yeah, then go do it. But I think what you're saying is there's a lot more that you get out of it than just now you have a dance degree. Congratulations.
Totally. And I will say, most companies and most jobs will not hire young dancers.
Right.
Rarely do you see like an 18, 19-year-old getting on a Broadway show. Yeah. Or rarely will you see them back up a certain artist.
Well, I think too, it's from an interaction standpoint as well. Like one thing I tell dancers a lot is like, if you're like if you're going on tour, you're spending X amount of hours every single day with people. The directors, the choreographers, they need to know that you can handle that mentally and maturely. Absolutely. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely. And so when somebody sees on your resume that you've had 3 or 4 years of just interacting with other human beings, they're like, okay, like you have something in you that it's not like right out of high school situation. So people, and I used to think this as well, as I was like, well, I should just be able to hop on to some company or whatever right out of high school. Right out of high school, and you're just like feeling so good, and you're graduated.
You're at the like level wise, you're there.
Yes, you're very capable of doing
dance level wise.
Yes, but there, and that's a very big BUT. I will go back and I will say, there's almost. It's a good way to use those few years to mature. Is to go to college, I will say. Now, do I think that's for everybody? No.
Yeah.
You can have that by going to workshops and going to company auditions, and you can get that maturity different ways. But most companies and most professional gigs are not going to hire young dancers.
Yeah.
So you might as well do something with your time
and
until
it's packaged.
Yes.
You don't have to think about it.
Exactly.
I mean, you got to pick your classes a little bit, but you don't have to like,
a little.
What convention should I go to? What workshops? Like it's,
exactly.
there it is.
It's set for you.
Yeah.
100%. So, I mean, people that I see getting on, especially tours or whatever it may be, it's usually starting around the age of 22, 23. And I'm like, that's the age you would graduate from college.
Right.
So why not
go
use your time, but be smart about what college you want to go to. So if you are going to use those formative years to go to a school, do so much research. Don't listen to your parents. I'm just going to throw that out there because they will say they have their own biases and they will say you should go here.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? You're not like a dancer. You don't have the mindset that is necessary for the career that I'm going into. My parents were so against BYU.
Really?
Yes, because it's just cultural. You know,
Wait,
it's like
so you grew up. I don't know if you still are. You grew up LDS, correct? Okay.
Yes.
So what?
So like,
I feel like they would be for BYU.
Well, yeah, but if you think about it, in Utah, you have BYU or Utah.
Okay.
And so there are still a lot of members that are Utah. There are definitely more members that are BYU.
Okay. Fair.
That being said,
so they're Utah.
They were very Utah.
Got it.
I grew
they
up
bleed
with,
red.
I literally grew up with a University of Utah room.
Okay.
It was painted red, black and white. Like, it was all the things. And
Got it.
I'm glad I went to the University of Utah.
Yeah.
First. But that being said, I was receiving messaging not to go to BYU, right? Like to choose the University of Utah over BYU.
Yeah.
All for what? For their own cultural biases. Like, I look back on it now and I'm just like, you guys, what are you doing? So when I say don't listen to your parents, that's why. Because they can be like, another example, I'll tell you. One of my dancers at a studio that I'm on faculty with, used to be, she went to Switzerland. Okay. She's at a university in Switzerland. Yeah. And she's just living her very best, most fulfilled life, and her parents did not want her to go. Yeah. Right? Because that's scary. Like, that's scary to send your child, especially if it's a daughter or a female, to another country without you right out of high school. I get it. I understand that. But at some point, parents have to go, okay, you know what's best for you and your future. Let me maybe share my opinion, but let me share my opinion as an opinion and not fact. And help your child like come up with different opportunities and options in front of you instead of being like, don't do this or do this. I would have them do the research on their own because like I said, this dancer is just the way that she has blossomed, and it is so beautiful to see. And her parents did not want her to go. It took a lot of what's the word I'm looking
convincing.
For? Thank you, convincing. And I was like, send me your parents' information. I'll give them a call if you need to, because I knew that was going to be best for her. Like I could just see her potential, and I'm just like, she has to get out of this country because she can do insane things, and she is. And so, long story short, places aren't going to hire young dancers most of the time. You might as well use that time either going to workshops, doing your own research, or going to college.
Well, the other thing too, now that I'm thinking about this, is you also risk, let's say you do happen upon a job that will take you right out of studio. You risk burning a lot of bridges because emotionally and mentally you're not mature enough to handle the situation.
Totally. And it can just crumble.
In this tiny world of dance that we live in, like, you could bomb one job and that could mean you not booking the next 10.
Totally.
So I think that's also an important thing along the same lines of what you're talking about, for dancers to understand that it's not just that you need to wait until you're older to go into the industry. It's that it's really hard.
Yes.
And you run into a lot of unfavorable characters and a lot of people that you just are not going to like.
Totally.
Which is okay, but you have to know how to still work with those people when you don't like them.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. Because like right out of high school, I mean, if you don't like somebody, you don't have to hang out with them.
Yeah.
You just you have your little tribe and you whatever.
Yeah.
But more often than not, there will be somebody on a job.
Going to happen.
It's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I really love and agree with that perspective.
Yeah.
That the more maturity you have, it's just going to buffer those people that are difficult to work with.
Yeah.
And you're not going to, I don't know, address those situations immaturely to where you will burn bridges. Yeah. Because, again, who knows who's going to watch this, but on the tour I was on, the Broadway tour, there was somebody that was younger, and they caused so many problems for the company.
I've seen it
for
so
the entire
many times.
company to the point that they were let go. They got fired, and it just like it was this
and
whole
the problem
thing.
is all those people, everybody talks.
Oh yeah,
even if it's not in a negative way, just like exactly like what we're doing here. You're bringing it up to bring light to the situation, and you times that by however many people are on the cast, and then you times that by all of their friends. Like it's
totally.
I've seen it so many times. I've seen it with dancers I've taught where I get I check in with people that they're working under, and they're like, well, this and happen, and I'm like, well, they gotta. I mean, they'll figure it out eventually. I mean, but yeah. Let
me give you a real time example of this. Very clear. I was doing a gig in New York City, and that choreographer was looking for some dancers for another job in the future. And in the room of us, there was like 20 of us. Yeah. And in the room, they were like, does anybody know so-and-so? Literally straight up. Just asked. No. They were like, does anyone know so-and-so? And there were a few people that had negative experiences with this person. Yeah. So in real time, I watched a choreographer pass on that option. Yeah. They didn't know who they were, but the people in the room had bad experiences with them. Yep. And so in that moment, I watched somebody not get a job because they were difficult to work with and because they were maybe not as kind or as easy and whatever. And so then they were like, how about this person? And then they got the opposite response, and they were like, oh my gosh, they're great. Yeah. And so they ended up reaching out to them, and I'm like, you guys, that's it. That's all it takes. I don't think
dancers understand. They like when people talk about networking and then they don't say anything else. They just say like network. That's the type of stuff that they're talking about. Totally. It's each individual relationship that or interaction even. It doesn't even have to be a relationship. Totally. Every interaction you have goes to building your network because something like that could happen. Yes. And you might that dancer that nobody liked could have interacted with those people one time, but it was enough for them to be like, not that person.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, that's where age and maturity is helpful. Yeah. Because I mean, because you can say like, network, do the work or whatever. But if you're not like pretty okay with who you are, and if you're not making steps to just be a good human, that is going to show in your artistry. That is going to show with your energy in class. Yeah. That's going to show, it just comes out everywhere. Yeah. And so when it comes to networking or making impressions, positive impressions on teachers or choreographers, I will say the more settled you are as a person, that's what we are drawn to. We are not drawn to the people that are just like screaming at you and with their movement and look at me. Yeah. Like that's for a convention world. But even then, I mean, many times at conventions, I would be in the back because there's space. Yeah. And I would just be living my absolute best life. Yep. And people would notice that because they're like, oh, he cares about his improvement. Yeah. He cares about more things than just me noticing him. Yeah. And that happens all the time, even in New York City still. You see at auditions, you see these people that are just fighting so hard, and you can tell there's just this lack of being settled. in your training and being settled in who you are. And that just comes with time.
Yeah.
And so
that's the hard part.
I know, right?
That's the hard part.
You can teach it to people if they're surrounded by other individuals who are settled and dropped in.
Yes.
But
yes.
Yeah, overall it does just come over time and experience, and that's why it is so important to have more experiences right out of high school when you're going into a professional career in dance.
Well, I think it shows too, like in a lot of times, at least for the past 3 or 4 years going to conventions, I've been more of a spectator. I'll pop into a few classes, but like I'm usually there with the studio, and so I'm just kind of watching. And I feel like that's what you're speaking to, is like when you see a younger dancer who is technically stronger dance in the same room as an older dancer, and by older I mean like an adult, who may not be as technically sound at this point.
Totally.
And it's an intangible difference between, it's something, an unexplainable. It just feels different on the adult dancer than it does on the younger dancer. And I think it's what you're talking about. I like that verbiage of like being settled in your dancing, because I think for a lot of us, we attach the dancing and we attach the accolades and the response to ourselves. That becomes who we are for a little bit when we're younger.
Totally.
And then when you become older and you've had people tell you you're bad, or you've gotten no's, or you've had tragic things happen, you start to realize that like you are just you first, and then the dancing is just after.
100%. I could not agree with you more.
Yeah.
And that concept is still happening in New York City, like in classes. They will have people that, for example, let's say somebody's in the combination that they do a batma, like a nice to your face kick or whatever. And you have these dancers that come in, which I feel like I do this now because my body, it just responds differently. They'll throw a 45-degree angle on that batma, and everyone in the room will scream. They love it because they just like, that dancer is so confident in what they can and cannot do, and they're okay with what they can't do. And when you're younger, it's like, one, you're required to do everything. You're expected to do everything well. The expectation. And so those expectations on yourself are strong. So, but when you get older, you have the freedom to show up to a ballet class in sweats and a hoodie and just train for whatever you need. And again, that just comes with time. It comes with experience. It comes with time. And so for younger dancers that see that and want that, it will come. It comes. You just have to wait. It comes. I think it's because they hear the word maturity and they think like physical, like body maturity. And so they're like, well, I feel mature, Totally. Like I feel mature. So why is that? But it's maturity in exactly what you're saying. It's years. It's experience. It's not a level thing. It's not advanced, intermediate, beginning. It's experience. Yes. And I will say, just kind of on this vein, especially over the past 5 years or so, you've seen it where acro and like is becoming the thing, and like these lyrical classes where everyone's just doing these crazy leg holds and the multiple turns and all that stuff. It's so impressive. And for a college dance team, you need that. Yes. Right? Like, let's be real. I agree. You have to have that that athleticism that you don't get anywhere else unless you train like that. Yes. That being said, I'm so excited for what you're going to say here. That's mainly the only path to go after high school with those tricks and with those with that technique is there, because let me tell you what, in most professional gigs you will never do more than a double. No. Ever. Like almost, I mean, there's a reason my non-technical self with zero technical experience was able to book jobs. Totally. That's the reason. Yes, because they look for quality. They look for maturity. They look for like, if an artist in front of you is messing up, can you deal with that? Do you have the mental capacity to fulfill these requirements? They don't. I mean, they want you to be experienced and they care about technique. But I mean, when are you going to do a leg hold spin? Never. Almost never. So it's like, because why? Why? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, when you're in an ensemble and you're dancing for a gig,
yeah,
the goal is to not draw attention.
Exactly.
So you're not doing these crazy things.
Same thing if you're backup for an artist, they don't want you to be the focus.
No.
That would be terrible.
Terrible. That's not why you're there.
Yeah.
You're like a beautiful background. Like, you're not supposed to be showing off what you can do.
Yes.
There are moments where they'll ask for tumbling, right?
Yes.
And like there are moments
and
in
there's
auditions
those
that do
people
that.
but at least from my experience, and I would love to hear your take too. From my experience, it never necessarily negatively affected me that I couldn't tumble, because they do exactly that. They say, who can tumble? Great, we have something for you.
Exactly.
It's rarely ever, unless you just happen, and then this would be your fault if you just went to an audition they were purely looking for that.
Oh yes.
But it's rarely ever that you go to an audition and it's a requirement that you can do that.
Totally.
And I feel like if it were, you would have known that going into it.
Yes, they'll have it on the call.
Right.
For sure.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely.
That's great. I love that.
So it is important to continue to train, but also be aware of your future and what you've got. Like, I have people that want to choreograph and dance professionally and stuff like that reach out to me often.
Yeah.
And they're like, what do I do? And it's like, well, where do you want to go? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Where do you want to go?
What do you want to do?
Like, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
Where do you want to, like, all those questions come before.
Yeah.
And they're like, how do I start? It's like, well, where
You've
are we
already
taking
been
you?
starting.
Yeah, like you're already
yeah.
doing stuff.
Yeah.
Like, what do you have your eyes set on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because again, if you're just like doing all this technical training and like all this whatever, and you want to go into theater, Broadway,
yeah.
Girl, why?
Well,
stop.
I just taught a class yesterday, and I use this little like line every time, is like, no one's ever cried at a competition by watching you do Alice Cones. You know what I mean? No one's ever left a competition and been like, wow, like the way they did that leg extension completely changed my outlook on life. It's never happened. And when you think about everything industrial, commercials, television, movie, theater, it's a sales pitch essentially. You know, it's you're either selling a product or you're selling word of mouth so that more people come and see the show.
Totally.
So how do we do that? We do that with feeling, with authenticity, and like making people feel something. They might be like, oh, that backflip was really cool.
Totally.
But it doesn't strike a chord with like, because it's not relatable.
Exactly.
I can't do a backflip, so I'm like, that's cool, but it doesn't, I'm not emotionally attached to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that you're sharing that messaging with dancers.
Yeah. But I like that you're now, you're in it. You know what I mean? I'm a spectator in a sense. You know what I mean? Like I've done some stuff and like, but you're in it. You're there. So you're experiencing, like, I think even sometimes like there's different levels, right? Like a in-studio teacher, the kids like half believe, you know? They're like, the teacher says something and they're like, okay. And then it's like me, where I'm kind of like, I'm out of studios. I have a little bit of like a voice. I think people believe a little more, but I think it's important for people to hear from dancers and artists who are actually in it. For them to really make, now they're, hopefully now they hear a bunch of people say it and they're like, okay, tricks are not a huge deal.
Yes,
but it's hard. It's so hard because like I get it from the kids' perspective. It's like, it's what they're seeing everywhere and online, and it's like all of the newer choreographers coming up in like the contemporary space, like that's all they do.
I know.
It's very like,
it's athletic.
Yeah.
But I will say, here's the thing though, is I'm not telling you to not train in those things.
Right.
It's like, keep doing it. I don't care.
Right. Especially if you like to do it.
Yes. If it fulfills you and you feel accomplished and you like, please, if you work on your flexibility and you're stretching at home, and like, why stop that? Do not stop that. That's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is have that like as a tool in your little tool belts. And once you have it, you have it. But also work on so many other things. You know how many studios I go to that have no idea how to do just like a contemporary roll on the floor?
Yeah.
And just stay connected to the floor?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Almost every single one.
I would actually love to dive into this with you, because this is a big thing that I'm seeing right now. I think we've been seeing it forever, but studios tend to cater to what's popular within their class
structure,
which makes sense.
It makes sense. I get it.
But the problem is now you're not really creating a fully formed dancer.
Totally.
Because they've been getting bits and pieces of a bunch of different things. Because we're seeing it right now with acro, and I think it's standing out more in my head now because it's such a people hate when I say this, but it's such a non-dance thing. Like it's really it's like borderline dance, you know? I don't know. Anyways,
no, I get it. It's more just athletic. Like it's kind of like how people think like cheer isn't necessarily dance.
Yes,
you know, it's kind of its own little world.
Yes.
And so is acro.
Yeah.
Like,
and so what we're seeing is like now studios are like, okay, our kids need to take jazz, ballet, hip hop. And then they also want to take contemporary. And they also want to take ballroom. And then we have to do tap because it's at convention. And now all the kids want to do tricks for college, so we have to do acro. Now you're talking about 6-7 different classes in the span of 5 days with a 4-hour window.
Totally.
It's just not like at that point, is the quality really there for any of those classes?
Totally.
Is I think like the question that bears.
Yeah.
Because it's so, I don't know.
I think in a position like that, which I feel like most studios find themselves in, it would be much more beneficial to do like a week by week basis where like this week, this is our emphasis. We're contemporary this week. Like we're bringing in only contemporary people.
Interesting.
And then you just get this like heavy, just boom, 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 same style. Yeah. And then you switch it the following week or it's like this chopping up exactly what you're saying. You're getting dancers who are mediocrely, that's not even a word, but good at everything.
Yeah.
Versus like if you give them the time to really settle in and then adopt new ways of moving over like a week span or a few days span.
Well, and then I get studios that'll be like, well, we want like, because they overwork routines because their kids can't, it's like this, it's a very like complex situation because they overwork routines because the kids can't get the routines how they want them to look. So then the solution is to overwork them. But the problem is that if we just go back to the core, like if you just made them stronger dancers, you wouldn't have to do so much cleaning because they would be able to self-clean. They would be able to get it better. But I think I don't know why studios are so hesitant to make that switch of like, let's grow these individuals as dancers, make them really good dancers.
Totally.
And then the routines would become so much easier.
I completely agree with you.
And then stuff like what you were just talking about, like not being able to do not simple, but things that like your human body should be accustomed to doing.
Yes.
Aren't able to do because all they know is like first position, passe. Does that make sense?
Of course it makes sense. Yes. I will say, being a devil's advocate for these studios.
Yes.
It's hard to motivate. Like it's right. Yeah. Like it's tempting to be like, you guys, we all need to just like do our own work, know your own routine, like do your work individually. A lot of these dancers are there because they love the social aspect of it.
Yeah, they're not doing anything outside of the studio.
Or their parents are wanting them to go to this. And I'm like...
But even if you just switched from like I know a lot of studios that they're finishing their routines right now, and now they're going to clean that same routine from now until April.
Yes.
Even if you just made the switch of like, let's start cleaning in January.
Totally.
Because also what happens, I see this all the time, is you get dancers that by the time they get to comp season, justifiably so, they hate their routine. Because they've been running it and cleaning it and getting screamed at for it for 7 months. So it's old and it's old and it's burnt out and it's, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Because in a real world situation, you have the luxury of like, you don't necessarily have to do it the same way every single time in most situations. You know what I mean? If you're if you're in a show or if you're in a company or you're doing something, if you're on tour, it doesn't have to be the same every single time.
No.
So it's fun every time. It's new every time.
Yes. But that's because you're mature enough to make choices that are still in the realm and world of what you're doing.
Okay.
Versus like these young dancers, I think a lot of the time you do have to clean the H out of them because they're not thinking as hard as they need to be, or they don't have the skills to not go off the rails and do something crazy. Like they need to have that rehearsed out of them. And which
is fair. And you have a mixed bag of like kids who are really into it and kids who, like to your point, are just there like they would be at soccer or baseball.
Exactly. Which I tell dancers all the time. I'm like, y'all, if you're not wanting to work at this, like go do chess. Go do something that's a lot less physical.
It's an expensive,
demanding,
time-consuming, straining thing to not be really, really into it.
Totally.
Yeah.
No, I feel that and I see that often.
Yeah.
But I will say, most of the time I feel like the majority of people want to be there.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's just the level at which they want afterwards that sometimes affects their current.
Absolutely.
Which I've come to like really now be really okay and really understanding of.
Yeah.
But I think, again, to our point earlier, as a younger teacher, it would frustrate me so bad.
Yes.
Because I didn't realize that, like, no, it's okay for these 10-year-old kids to just want to have fun with their friends.
Totally. And not, like, have these massive future goals in mind. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. And I love when dancers are transparent about it, because then, like, it clears the table for all of us. Like when a dancer's like, I really just want to be a doctor when I grow up. It's like, cool. Now I know where we're at.
Exactly. I have actually, in certain like camps or master classes that I've taught, sometimes I've started with that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, everyone close your eyes, blah, blah, blah. And then I'm like, raise your hand if you're interested in this after studio.
Yeah.
Raise your hand. Just so that I can get a grasp of what people are doing. And then that way I'm not expending so much energy on this dancer who is like, girl, I'm done after high school. Like, this is just something to do.
This is just really fun right now.
Exactly. Why as an educator am I going to be trying to just pull so much out of them when that's just like not their goal?
Yeah.
And that's okay. Like, and I'm not saying that I give certain dancers less energy, but I will just not try as hard to get a certain texture or certain movement out of them if I'm like, you're not going to need this.
Yeah.
So why let's just, you stay doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I'll help you with whatever you need. But this dancer over here that is solely focused on getting into a university, like a prestigious like dance, whatever, I'm going to be like, no, we need to get this out of you. We need to get this habit out of you right now at the end of this class, because I don't want you continuing on with this. Yeah. You know, the stakes are raised.
Maturity, though.
Yes, exactly. Based on kind of what they want to do. So I think as studio owners, it's very important to know that from your dancers, to sit down with them and go, what do you want? Yeah. Like, why are you here? Yeah. Let's talk about it.
Well, and I think it's cool when studios do like Utah Dance Artists, they have their conservatory program, which for those not in Utah, they're just dance studio, and then they have it's not necessarily advanced. I guess it's advanced, but they have like an extra program.
Very much. That's the studio. Top. So those are the girls that I work with.
Yeah. And I love that setup, because now you're making it very clear for the staff, for the teachers, for the parents, if you are in this bucket, you are going to get a very different experience. And it's not because we're watering down or we're giving you less value. It's because you've shown that you want this.
Yes.
Which I think is really important, because just as we're fleshing this out, I think a lot of studios will listen to this and be like, well, I have 15 kids and half of them want to be professionals and half of them don't. So then what do I do?
Totally.
Separate them. Give those kids a place to be, and then allow those other kids to still get quality, good professional training.
Yeah.
But let it be more fun. Let it be more fulfilling for them in that moment.
Yes.
Whereas these kids want to be fulfilled later on.
Yes. I couldn't agree more with you. I, like you, have probably taught at hundreds of studios at this point.
Yeah.
And I've literally now taught all over the country and the world. Like I've taught in Israel. Like I just see it so clearly, and I agree with you that it benefits everybody.
Yes.
When you can just bite the bullet and separate these students that want different things. Yeah. Because
it creates resentment within the students too.
It does. It does, because then like you have these students that are just fully in, and then obviously the teachers see that, and so they're giving more to these students. So then you have like, oh, well, these people are the favorites, and it's like, well, look at what they're putting in. Yes. And so I completely agree with you, and UDA is where I taught. Yeah. It's the only studio that I've really been on faculty. Yeah. That allowed myself to be on faculty with. And I'm not saying this is what every studio should do, because like you said, their circumstances are different. Yeah. But I would say once your dancers hit high school, that is the time to separate them. I don't know if, because at this studio, they have conservatory minis all the way up through seniors. Yeah. And, I don't know which is most beneficial.
I think you risk burnout more with starting them younger into that intense training than older.
Yes, but if those younger dancers see that as they get older, they have the option to split into conservatory, and then
that's where the magic happens.
At this studio, they have conservatory and varsity. And varsity are the ones that are more interested in maybe more high school, and then maybe not dancing further. And then they have the conservatory. So when these younger dancers aren't separated, and then they get to choose in the future which kind of path they want to take at the studio, it's great. It's so great for them, because then, for example, like with conservatory, they bring in massive people like Peter Chu, Jen Freeman, Chelsea Thedinga, all these like contemporary gurus from all over the country. But they're investing in those dancers, because those dancers go out and put themselves in companies and universities, and like that girl that I was talking about that went to Switzerland, she's from UDA. One of the other girls went to NYU Tisch, which is huge. They only accept a tiny amount of dancers. Another's at Pace in NYC. They go out and they do these things because that program is they breed them to go do this. But that's because that's what the dancers want.
Yes, and they do a very, very good job, as you're articulating, of creating that separation in a way that's not negative. Like it's at least from my experiences, even talking to dancers, because I taught one season, but I was teaching the varsity kids.
Oh yeah.
And even just getting a feel for like their feelings towards the program, I could tell very quickly that they were doing something correctly, because it wasn't a negative aspect. Totally. It was very understanding that like, they want more and they do more, and we just totally. And that was a really cool thing for me. Like, okay, this is being done correctly, because if it wasn't, you'd have this weird dynamic of like, oh, well, they're just like the better favorite people, and it's like so I think that also speaks volumes to how they have it set up.
Yes, because of course naturally there is in some dancers this kind of like, oh, we're less than. But for the most part, like you said, they understand. They're like they're dancing 40 hours a week. I don't want to do that.
I don't want to do that.
So like that's why I'm not on that team. Exactly. So I agree with you that they've done it in a way that they recognize where the dancers are and why they are there.
Where are we at?
One thing I will say that I am seeing in studios, I could talk about this stuff for hours.
It's so hard. Go. What is this?
What I am noticing, please, if you are a studio owner and or parent, please be aware of this. I want to make a post about it because it is so aggressive lately. Everyone is showing up to class in full jewelry. In decked out necklaces, bracelets, earrings.
My wife has this issue at her studio.
I'm like, you guys, what are you doing? Like actually, what are you doing? Because let me explain why I see this as a problem. I'm seeing dancers come into class with half of their mind there. They're wearing Apple Watches. They're smart watches where they're still checking their messages. They're still doing all of these things. And some would argue that like jewelry isn't that big of a deal. At their age, it is.
Yeah.
At their age, it's getting in the way. I can't tell you how many times I've seen these bead necklaces pop and just beads everywhere. And then we have to take time. We have to stop class, okay? We have to stop class to pick up plastic beads on the floor. I've seen earrings stepped on. I've seen earrings caught. I've seen necklaces pulled. I'm like, you guys, when you're stepping into class, bare, okay, with just your clothes, there's this, you're dropped in. You're dropped into where you are. It's respectful. It's professional. You do not have distraction.
Yeah.
When you are covered with distraction, how are you going to give your teacher your full attention?
Yeah.
It's impossible.
Yeah.
Because say they're doing something on the floor and you don't want to roll your wrist because you have jewelry and it's uncomfortable. Are you kidding me? Are you literally kidding me? What are you in that classroom for? You can tell how much I've thought about this. It makes me really upset because I'm like, at the beginning, because I've been setting so much choreo and I'm like, you guys, at the beginning, I'm like, take everything off right now.
Yeah.
Please. Because at this point, I've just seen it distract. That's all it does. It distracts and it separates because everyone, like all these people have these certain earrings or these certain bracelets. And so then they're looking at each other and they want them. And I'm like, that's not why we're here.
Yeah.
We are here in this studio right now to train, to grow, to progress, and to learn.
Yeah.
It's just another distraction.
Yeah.
I'm like, leave it out. Leave it out. Like this is me begging studio owners.
Yeah.
Please get a handle on this.
Yeah.
Because it is such a small thing, but it is a small thing that causes big problems.
Yeah.
And when you're partnering
it makes perfect sense.
When you're partnering in like a piece.
Yeah.
We're lifting people. Hands are going on other people's bodies. It's like things get caught, things get snapped, things get pulled.
Yeah.
I've seen it where earrings pull, like it's painful. Blood happens. I'm like, all of this stuff is 100% avoidable.
Very easily too.
So easily.
Yeah.
Just if you step into class, your neck, your earrings, your wrists, and your ankles are bare.
Yeah.
That is such a simple problem to fix.
Yeah.
Anyways, it's literally I can't even explain to you how frustrating it is for me to see.
Yeah.
And it's been over the past like 5 years that I've noticed this like people I agree, never did I see people showing up to class with jewelry. And if it was the most minimal whatever, but even then it was like, okay, don't do that. Now, I'm not kidding you.
Yeah, it's like full,
It literally takes us 5 minutes.
Yeah.
At the beginning of me going to set choreo for everyone to take all their stuff off.
Yeah.
For what? Like literally for what, you guys? What are you doing? Like what are you doing? That's my question.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel better.
I agree.
I've been needing to get that out, and I'm gonna make a post about it because
make a post.
I feel very passionately about that.
Yeah. I agree with you.
Anyway,
I'm with you.
It's just something little.
But there's so many little things that if we did them, it would make huge differences.
Totally.
You know?
Creating a professional environment in your studio takes so much effort.
Yeah.
From the instructors and owners.
Yeah.
It is a 24/7 full-time job.
Yeah.
Keeping your studio professional.
Yeah.
And if that's not the case, that's fine. I'll tell you what, the people that come in and work with your dancers aren't going to want to come back.
Yeah.
I've already had that this season.
It makes a big difference in just the way the students carry themselves, the way they interact, the way they react to things. It makes a huge difference.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And if it's not on your mind as an instructor, as a owner, you're going to reap what you sow. Like you're getting what you're putting in. Or what you're not putting in.
Yes.
And creating a professional, mature environment in your studio is going to bring the best results from your students. I know that.
Yes.
From just everywhere that I have taught.
Yeah.
It is night and day, the experience that the instructors have.
Yeah.
The experience that the parents have.
Yeah.
It's all, and let me say one more. I just, again.
No, go.
if parents are not helping their dancers learn respect at home, they are not giving it at the studio.
Yeah.
That I can promise you.
Yeah.
I want to even say parents as guardians, like whoever is watching these kids as they get older and teaching them, if they're not creating an environment of respect, and I want to say professionalism, but I mean in a home that's a little strange, but just respect, kindness, awareness. Yeah. If those things are not being taught, they are absolutely not showing that at the studio. Yeah. And so if parents are hearing complaints about the behavior of their children in class, I see it so often where parents think it's not them. Yeah. And I'm like, you guys, where do you think this is coming from?
Yeah. Well, it's top down all the way around. Yeah. In the studio, it's director, teachers, students. So it's the same thing at the home. It's very much top down.
Yes. And I remember, like, at the studio, even this summer, I was having problems with these specific dancers. Yeah. Which thankfully I don't run into this often, but I was just talking to some moms afterwards about just the disrespect that I was not ready for at the studio, because it usually doesn't happen. Right. And one of the moms, it was mainly their child. It was mainly this one child. Yeah. And I remember talking to her very directly and just being like, yeah, there's some like major disrespect going on. Like, these are some problems and all this stuff. And she goes, and I was talking about how these people turn into black holes and start influencing other people. And they just start sucking energy from everyone around them. Right. And she goes, yeah, I'll have to remind her about being careful to not let other people do that to her. And I was like, all right, this is the end of the road.
Well, here's a surprise for you.
This is the end of the road for the progression of that dancer. Oh, and no. I was like, wow. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Like, when in doubt, just think it's your dancer first. Yeah. Talk to them and then move forward. Anyway, so.
No, it's a huge thing. I've had a couple episodes with a mentor of mine named Jadel, a new mentor of mine, and he's really big on like studio culture and like the studios that he works at. Like what is your one thing that he tells? He helps a lot of dancers that want to transition into being teachers. Cool. And one thing he kind of teaches them is always like, make sure you're asking these questions of like, what is your studio culture? What are your values? How is conflict handled within the studio? How is communication done within the studio? Because I know even for me, like when I was growing up, like I never asked any questions when I was getting hired at studios. It was just like, oh, you want me to come teach? Great. I'll come teach. Totally. And then later, halfway through the year, I'm like, oh, this is terrible. I hate it here. But it's like if you don't ask those questions up front. But I also think it holds the studio responsible as well, because if more people are asking those questions, then it makes them realize like, oh, like maybe we should kind of think about the structure of our business a little bit more, as opposed to just like, because it is unfortunate that a lot of studios get started by people who just love dance, or they like dance, or they want to be able to provide some sort of outlet, which is great. But we also have to remember that we're taking hundreds of people's money every month, and we are entrusted with the time of hundreds, if not thousands, of students. Yes. Children. Yes. So it's really, really important for studios to I think for studios to start stepping up a little bit more and remembering that like we all love dance. That's great. But we all are also charging people a decent amount of money, and there's an obligation there that we're providing an ethical, sound, professional experience. And then to your point, when that gets passed down, it leads to a better experience for the dancers, because they know exactly what to expect. They know exactly what's expected of them. Yeah. There's no confusion. And confusion is when the dancers start to become resentful of teachers or frustrated with the studio, because the student thought their expectation was something, and the studio thought their expectation was something else, and there's no communication between the two. Totally. So yeah, I definitely agree with you that there's there's a lot of little things that studios could do that would combine to just completely change the environment of your studio and the result of your studio.
Totally. I completely agree. And what I will say, going back to setting yourself up for the future, if you as a dancer don't feel that your studio is giving you what you need anymore, and you feel like it's not as professional as you want, or they're not bringing in people that are pushing you in ways that you want, go somewhere else. Like we have this level of loyalty, which is fine because it's just in our society, right? Like that, it just bleeds into everything. So I understand. But that being said, whatever a studio is doing or is not doing is fully in the hands of the owners. Yeah. And if your students are not being fulfilled or are whatever, if they want something different and you're not providing that, guess what? They're going to go somewhere else. Yeah. And that is okay. Yeah. That is so okay. Yeah. There's this studio in a state and they don't require as much from their dancers. And they know that. Yeah. And so when people leave, they are fully aware why people leave. And they're like, and that's okay. Yeah. And I think it's great. Yeah. It's the people that are hurt and they're like, oh, why are they blah, blah, blah.
They want to be everything to everyone. Yes. And it's just not possible.
And that's not possible. No. And that's okay. And that it's totally fine. But if it's happening frequently, that you keep getting, that you cannot retain people, it's time to look at yourself.
Something's wrong.
It's time to go, okay, why are they leaving? Where are they going? Yeah. And why are they drawn to these groups instead of mine?
Well, and the other conversation I had with Jadel is he was saying that a lot of people don't understand. They want to be a director, but they don't actually understand what that entails. And in reality, a lot of people want to be a studio owner.
Yes.
Where they just own the studio and that's the end of it.
Totally. Being
a director is a very, very different set of skills that you need to have, and
Absolutely.
It's very involved. It needs to be very hands-on. It needs to be very tapped into what's happening in every single class.
Absolutely.
I'm not a huge, I don't want to say fan, but I don't think that directors should be going in and watching everybody's class every single week. But the fact that I've taught at studios where the director never once stepped foot in my class, looking back, blows my mind, because I'm like, you have no clue what's going on in this classroom. You have no clue what these dancers are getting taught.
That's a good point.
So I think it's I've learned to be a little bit more accepting of it used to make me really uncomfortable when people would watch my classes. And I think the artist in me was like, oh, it reduces the integrity of the moment. Yeah. But now I've come to kind of realize if anything, I think it elevates it more, because now everybody's on the same page of what's happening, and everybody has a clear understanding of what's happening, and it doesn't necessarily change anything. It was just me thinking that it did. Yeah. That caused that.
Yes.
But I think, and I think to your point, I get so many messages from parents that just blow my mind. That'll be like, my dancer didn't make the team they wanted, and they asked their director, and the director just said, well, you're just not good enough. And they're like, and then we ask their teachers for feedback, and they won't give us feedback. What do we do? And I'm like, what do you mean, what do you do? It's a very simple solution. If the person who's teaching your kid is not willing to tell you why they're not improving, then there's something very significant going wrong there, because that's literally their job.
Oh my gosh. If that is happening to anybody listening to this podcast, run away. Run. Don't
that's
walk.
What I'm saying. I'm
run from your studio and go find a different one.
Yeah. I'm like, you really only have so much obligation as a dance teacher. That's a pretty big part of it.
That's so unfortunate. That's really unfortunate.
I get these all the time.
Really?
All the time. And I'm like, what? And I always tell people, this is my spiel. I always say, check in with yourself first.
Yes.
Check in with yourself first. When dancers reach out to me and they're like, I feel like there's favorites and yada, yada, yada. I always say, check in with yourself first.
Amazing.
Ask yourself the simple question of, am I doing everything that I can do to get the most out of this experience?
Mm-hmm.
Have I asked my instructor what I can work on? Have I asked the director? Have I put forth am I practicing at home? If you can check all those boxes, then you need to leave. Because you're not at that point, because sometimes it's on you.
Yes. I would say a lot of the time.
Yeah, sometimes you're not getting the most out of the situation because you're not giving anything to the situation.
Yes.
But if you can check all those boxes and then you're still getting not much in return, then yeah, there's probably a studio 10 miles from you that would be more than happy to have you.
Oh, yeah.
That would be ecstatic for you to walk through their doors.
Yes, that are invested in you.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Oh, that's unfortunate. I'm sad to hear that you experience that often.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like the other weird one I don't understand this one is, so I do like online critiques where people send me their solos and then I judge them. And obviously right now I do like 1 or 2 a week, but during comp season, it's a lot.
Uh-huh.
And I get these parents that'll reach out and they're like, our teacher won't give us any feedback after competitions. Like they won't tell us what the judges said. They won't show us our score sheets, nothing.
What?
And I've never been able to I've even asked on my story, I'm like, if you're a studio owner, give me one good reason why you would not want to show them score sheets or at least translate the feedback to them. Like, I just can't wrap my head around why there'd be one good reason not to do that, especially in a situation where, like, the parent has essentially paid you to take their dancer to that competition. Like,
big time.
Like, in my head, they have the right to any of that information. Like, that shouldn't be it would blow your mind how many of those messages I get where it's like,
are you serious?
They'll reach out to me and they're literally like, can you please give us something? Because we don't get anything from our teacher. They don't give us feedback. They don't let us see the score sheets. And I'm just like, and I'll say it in the video when I film the critique. I'm like, I'm so sorry. And I'll be like, I would genuinely maybe look at switching teachers if you're not getting like what I'm about to give you after every single practice, then there's something going significantly wrong.
I can tell by how you're saying this that you're telling the truth, but there is part of me that does not believe you.
I'll show you. I can show you emails.
No, it's
crazy.
I guess the part of me that doesn't believe you, like, I got
another one for you too.
Do you really? Like,
the other one I get is this: please don't post this. Which that's not the issue. I ask people. So when they order from me, there's a little questionnaire, and it's like, can I post this on social media?
I see. Okay.
But I'll get people that'll be like, they'll justify it. So they'll be like, I'm so sorry, but can you please just not post this? Our studio will get really upset if we seek out other feedback. And to me, if like I think about it like this, if that was happening in a relationship, that's a big issue, right? Like that's
a big issue.
To me, that shows that your studio clearly knows that they are not fulfilling you enough. They know. They're aware of it. So they don't want you to seek out any other information because they're so insecure about what they're offering that if you were to get something even remotely better, you'd leave. And that's the other one that gets me a lot is I'm like, man, this is a bad situation. If your studio's telling you,
Utah, or is it elsewhere as well?
No,
really? Oh, it's
majority
elsewhere. Okay.
Majority of my audience in general, so even like views on social, is outside of Utah.
Okay, this
makes more
sense.
A majority of my critiques are Midwest, East Coast. Pretty much, I'd say 80% Midwest, East Coast.
Okay, this is making more sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In this situation, though, are studios as readily available to them? Because here in Utah, there's so many.
Definitely not like they are here.
Yeah.
And okay. I think that's what creates this idea is that like they don't have to. The quality doesn't have to be there because there's no sort of like there's no competition.
Yeah.
You know
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So they don't have to care. Because where are the kids going to go? Like, you're going to drive 40 miles to the next town?
Totally. Which There are some dancers that I know of.
Oh, yeah.
That have driven an hour and a half.
Oh, yeah.
To get the training that they feel like they need.
I've had kids drive from Idaho to studios here in Utah.
Wild.
Yeah. But yeah, those are the emails that I'm just like, I do not get this. I do not get this. This is the thing is like the feedback one, I can understand a little bit more.
As in like
a little bit
the
more.
Studio is
like that they don't want you to get outside feedback.
Yes.
I
can understand that a little bit.
I could have a conversation with somebody about that and I could probably hear out their point of view.
Yes.
The not sharing feedback from competitions one, I would just blatantly be like, no.
I need somebody to message me and explain very clearly
why
they think that is beneficial.
The only thing I could think of is that maybe they don't want it to like hinder the dancer.
What do you mean hinder?
Like make them feel bad about themselves? But
Girl,
again, I'm
choose
like,
a different activity.
That's what I'm saying is like, but then when I'm getting these emails, I'm like, clearly this parent, they want it.
Yes.
Like they've paid me to react to their video. They don't care.
Whoa.
At that point, they don't care if it's a bad review. That's what they want. They want anything at that point.
Jeez.
Because those are the emails I get. It's like, they're like, we don't get anything. Good, bad, nothing. It's like, we just do the solo and that's it. And I'm like.
And they just.
Yeah.
I genuinely can't imagine. I don't know what that life would feel like.
And I will say too, on the flip side, I have had a lot of really good interactions where the parents are like, we shared this with her teacher and the teacher loved it.
Awesome.
And like da-da-da-da, like
great.
But then I get these other ones where it's like please don't post anything, like the teacher will be really upset. And I'm like, so I guess my point is, if you're a teacher out there and you're upset about your dancers getting advice from other teachers, then I don't.
Please message me and let's have a conversation because I am. If anything, I just want to hear. I want to hear what in the world is going on behind that way of thinking.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. Give me. I like to do a little golden nugget at the end. So, what's your? If you could tell dancers right now at this point in your life, what's kind of a standout thing that you think dancers should know or think about or do or experience?
I'll say two things. One, get rid of the jewelry. That's number one.
Love it.
That's number one.
Love it.
Two, take in as much information from as many different sources as you possibly can. Often I see dancers plateau, and that's why. The teachers that they're learning from, which are probably wonderful, I don't have the skills to teach students everything they need to know to be incredible, right? They need to be learning from different people as well. I'll say as well. And what I see is a lot of studios don't bring many people in, and their dancers plateau like crazy. Truly, you can only be as good as the information that you're taking in. So if you continue to be taught by the same people every day, all day, and for a year straight, and you don't have new information coming into your system, you cannot progress past what that person is giving you. And so I would encourage dancers to go to workshops, go to open master classes, go take wherever there's a studio or wherever there's a workshop that's just open to everybody, go take it. Go fill your tool belt with as many different styles and forms of dance as you can. Because if you solely go into just ballet companies, that's totally fine. Mark my words, there will be a choreographer that walks into that room that throws something at you that is so foreign. But if you've trained from many different people in many different forms, you'll be okay. You'll be okay. There will be a form that is close enough to what that choreographer is giving that you can do.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would say.
Yeah.
is take in as much and as different information as you can.
I love it.
Especially while you're growing and younger.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody listening. Tell everybody where they can find you.
My socials are just my name, just Brayden Singley.
Amazing. Everything will be linked as well in the description.
Awesome.
Are you open for choreography classes, all the above?
Very much so.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I'm back in New York next week, so I'm on the East Coast.
Yeah.
So that's obviously going to be easier for me than people out here in the West.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I appreciate it.